Once upon a time, in a quiet little town nestled between green hills and winding roads, something unexpected was about to unfold in a modest primary school. The sun filtered through the classroom windows, casting warm, golden rays across the rows of curious faces. The children chattered and fidgeted, not knowing that today would be anything but ordinary. A philosophy professor, renowned throughout the town for his thought-provoking lessons, stepped into the room. He was an older gentleman with kind eyes that twinkled with mischief and a weathered satchel slung over one shoulder. In his hands, he held a large, empty glass jar that caught the sunlight, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the walls. Instantly, the room fell into a hush. This was not an ordinary prop. This was something special. He placed the jar gently on the table at the front of the class, its glass smooth and pristine. The students leaned forward, eyes wide with anticipation. Without a word, the professor reached under the table and retrieved a pile of large stones, each one polished and heavy, about the size of his fist. With careful, deliberate movements, he placed the stones into the jar one by one. A few clinks and thuds echoed in the silence as he worked, until the stones reached the rim and he could add no more. With a soft smile, he turned to the class. "Is this jar full?" he asked, his voice calm and inviting. The students, confident in their answer, nodded eagerly and chimed, "Yes." A few of the older students exchanged glances, wondering if there was more to this simple exercise. The professor's eyes crinkled with amusement as he bent down again and pulled out a bag of small, smooth pebbles. A collective murmur rippled through the room as he began to pour the pebbles into the jar. The pebbles trickled down and around the larger stones. Finding the spaces between them, he gave the jar a gentle shake, and the pebbles settled into the crevices, filling in the gaps until the jar seemed full once again. "Now, is the jar full?" he asked, looking up with a raised brow. This time, the students hesitated. A few nodded, less certain than before. He responded not with words, but with a knowing smile as he reached for a bag of sand. The sound of shifting grains captured the student's attention as he poured the sand into the jar. The tiny grains found every hidden nook and cranny, weaving around the stones and pebbles, flowing into spaces the students hadn't even noticed. By the time the last grain settled, the jar was undeniably full. "Is the jar full now?" he asked, his tone gentle but insistent. This time, the students exchanged looks, some of them giggling nervously. A few whispered, "Yes," while others shook their heads. But the professor wasn't done yet. From beneath the table, he lifted a small jug of water. With great care, he poured the water into the jar. The liquid flowed down, saturating the sand and trickling into the remaining spaces until it reached the very top. Finally, he nodded. "Now, the jar is full," he said. A hush fell over the room as he stepped back and surveyed the class. He waited a moment, allowing the significance of the demonstration to settle. "This jar," he began, "represents your life. The stones are the truly important things: your family, your health, your close friends. Even if everything else were lost, and only they remained, your life would still be full." The room was silent now, each student reflecting on what he had said. The pebbles are the other things that matter, like your job, your house, your car. They are significant, but not as vital as the stones. He gestured to the sand. The sand, however, represents all the small stuff, the minor tasks, the daily to-dos, the trivial concerns that fill up our time. He paused, letting that sink in. If you fill your jar with sand first, he continued, there is no room for the pebbles or the stones. If you spend all your energy and time on the small stuff, you will never have room for what truly matters. A young boy in the front row shifted in his seat, his brow furrowed as he listened intently. The stones must come first, the professor said, his voice growing deeper, more resonant. They are your foundation. Without them, your life would feel empty, no matter how full it seems with sand and pebbles. He glanced around the room, his eyes meeting those of a thoughtful girl sitting near the back. She raised her hand. But Professor, she said, her voice soft but clear, what about the water? Where does that fit in our lives? A smile spread across the professor's face, warm and approving. Ah, the water, he said. That, my dear, represents the unexpected moments, the spontaneous laughter, the conversations over a cup of coffee, the small joys that bring life color and warmth. No matter how full your life seems, there is always room for these. A quiet buzz filled the room as the students pondered this. Some sat up straighter. Others glanced at their friends, a newfound understanding lighting their faces. In our fast-paced world, the professor concluded, it's easy to get caught up in the sand. We fill our days with chores and checklists, forgetting what truly holds value. But remember this jar. Make time for your stones, first your loved ones, your health, your passions. Let the pebbles and sand fit around them, not the other way around. He stepped back, his eyes sweeping over the room, catching the quiet nods and thoughtful expressions. And the water, he added, his tone softening. Never forget to leave space for those moments that surprise you, that remind you of the beauty in simply being alive. Even when your life feels packed, there's always room for a shared smile or a moment of calm. A hush lingered as the students absorbed the lesson, each thinking of their own stones and how they could rearrange their lives to fit them in first. The professor's jar was more than a lesson. It was a mirror reflecting the priorities of life, urging everyone to make sure that when their own jar was filled, it held what truly mattered most. Thank you so much for listening to this story. If you found value in it, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support means a lot and helps us share more inspiring content.